What's going on, everybody? John Impemba here with Andrew Cooper. Welcome into the Quick Out Fantasy Football live stream here today. We're taking a look at tight end ADP here. Of course, Andrew Cooper, the tight end whisperer, tight end master of all things here at Fantasy Alarm. Look at that. He's even got the hat to go with the title here. Coop, this time next week, this show, you and I are going to be breaking down some actual NFL football games. This is our last show of the preseason. My man, we made it. We made it through.
Yes, and that honestly, I'm glad we set it up like this because tight end's my favorite position, but that is my favorite show, and that's my favorite version of this show. So the Quick Out show, the whole goal is to get you in, get you out, get you all the info you need with as little nonsense as possible, and that's why we've been hitting every position once a week, bing, bang, boom. But during the season, that's when we really get you the information that changes the game, because we go through game by game, giving you what you need to know, who you can actually start from those games, any bets we're placing, just boom, all the information you need, 1 hour, bingo, bango, bongo. So that show next week is amazing, but I'm glad that you put tight end this week. You planned it out perfectly because instead of just being excited by next week, we get to do my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, we set it up great, right? I do the quarterbacks. We did quarterbacks last week. You do the tight ends. We do tight ends this week here. Ending it with our specialties here, Coop. So we're going to be breaking down redraft tight end ADP. But I got to let everybody know. You see the QR code, the graphic on the screen. You see the scroll down at the bottom. I know that you have a fantasy football draft tonight, tomorrow, Friday, this weekend, next week. Still plenty of people drafting. Still plenty of time to take advantage of the Fantasy Alarm Living Draft Guide and cheat sheet. You get it free with any subscription. And right now, the annual subscription package is 40% off the month-to-month price. I mean, you really can't beat that. You're essentially getting half a year for free. The NFL season for fantasy football and DFS is 6 months long. You're basically getting 6 months for free when you go annual. You get the free draft guide, the free cheat sheet. Howard Benner's away, going fishing, following fish around. Still updating the cheat sheet with the most relevant information for everybody so you guys can dominate your draft. So you get the 7-day free trial when you sign up. You get the free draft guide and cheat sheet. No reason not to sign up today and get involved with the Fantasy Alarm family during the football season, Coop, man.
Yeah, I mean, now's the time. Like, if you made it to now without getting it, I don't know why, because it's all living draft guide. Everything's updated regularly, but now is the best time. We have got a deal for you. So get in there and grab that. But I think it's time to get into some tight ends, Johnny.
Yeah, let's cut to the chase here. We'll start it off. We're talking redraft tight ends, so let's just talk about the top 5. Coop. Now I'm looking at RT Sports ADP here. Again, RT Sports right now has their fantasy football championship and their fantasy football best ball championship going on right now. You have a $500,000 grand prize on the line for their fantasy football championship here. So talk me through their top 5 here. And we can talk about some news as well as it pertains to the tight end position here. But Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson, Waller, and Kittle are your top 5. Any news that we should know about the tight end position, Coop, before we get into this?
I mean, the thing with the news is like we'll get to most of it as we go. I know we usually do it up front, but you know, the news right now is just a lot of the depth chart stuff, but there wasn't too much that was crazy. I mean, OJ Howard got cut, which makes it just Austin Hooper and Michael Mayer. I wanted to see what was going to happen with the Colts, and they didn't cut anybody. They just kept all 5 of them. The tight end, the Dolphins, very strange offseason for them, where I thought they were going to go after Dalton Schultz, and instead the Texans, who run the same offense from the 49ers, went and got him, right? So they actually cut Elijah Higgins, who they drafted to potentially play tight end. So now it's really thin over there. I mean, it's like Durham Smythe and a guy named Julian Hill, couple
blockers, right?
Couple blocking tight ends. Yeah, and a fullback. It's crazy. They are so invested in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill that they say we're just going to roll out a blocking tight end and a fullback, and we'll protect the quarterback, and you try and stop these 2 maniacs at wide receiver, and it's still a tall task, even then. So
Tompkins here, Julian Hill, Miami tight end 2.
There he is, dude. Julian Hill, that's the guy. So yeah, not beyond that, I guess. Our super deep cut, the new Eli Wolf in Stone Smart he made the team. So that's always fun to see. Always good to have one of those guys in your back pocket. The thing is, so many people have that question. I did an AMA on Reddit, got it again. Who's the deepest tight end you're rostering in the crazy deepest league. It's people like JB Barry that play 32 team leagues. So the way I look at it, I say I always want to keep somebody in my very back pocket, even deeper than guys like Charlie Kohler and Isaiah Likely and Stone Smart. That's the guy who, he's a converted, he played quarterback and he then converted to wide receiver and then they converted him to tight end. And both of his parents are college basketball players. So as far as the memes go, John, he checks every single box.
Yeah, exactly. They'll mention it 10 times when he's on the field,
Yeah. And on top of all that, his name is Stone Smart, and his parents made his middle name Cole, like Cole Beasley.
Yeah.
So this guy's name is Stone Cole.
Stone
Cold Smart, the Stone Cold Stunner. So yeah, he's the deepest guy we're looking at. Beyond that, again, another team, Washington. I was like, okay, let's see who they cut. Let's see who they keep. They kept, I'm not even kidding, 7 tight ends. They put Amari Rogers on the IR, but I mean, they kept all these guys. So anyway, we didn't really get as much information as I wanted there. So there's not a lot of important news. So I say we just get into the tight ends right now.
Yeah, I mean, we'll answer Mile High Luke's question there about Noah Gray being a tight end 2 in KC. In DFS, you're always championing like the punt Noah Gray might get the end around sneak play, but does he have any value in a dynasty or redraft league for you?
So that's the thing is that in dynasty, maybe you hold him just in case. The thing is, we at least got a clarity. There was always kind of a Jody Fortson versus Noah Gray situation, but the Chiefs actually, when they were doing their cuts this week, put Jody Fortson on the IR that ends your season, not just pup. So he's just like done. He's done.
Yeah.
So Noah Gray is a guy that goes out and he plays 50-60% of the snaps at times, and usually plays no less than 30 or 40. And he was getting a target, at least one target every single week for like 14 straight weeks.
Right.
So he's a guy that it's not like Isaiah Likely where if Mark Andrews goes down, I plug Isaiah Likely directly into my lineup. I'm not sure I do that with Noah Gray, but he's the second best quote unquote tight end handcuff. And I don't even think there are any others.
Right.
Maybe Cole Turner, I guess, So Noah Gray is definitely on the radar. He's not quite Isaiah Likely, but at least he plays. And again, DFS in that offense, anyone can score that random touchdown. He gets 1-2 targets a week, so why not?
Those of you tuning in here again, thanks for joining. Getting questions, throw them in the chat. Coop and I more than happy to answer them for you throughout the stream. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to the channel, help us out. We just went over the 4,000 subscriber mark, so on the way up here as we head into
on the way up
fantasy football season. Coop, we'll go back to it. The top 5 tight ends on the board over at rtsports.com right now. No surprises, I don't think. Maybe a surprise. I'll get your take on it. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, Darren Waller, George Kittle. Thoughts on the top 5? Are you shocked to see Darren Waller surge up the boards?
Nah, man. I'm disappointed because we were drafting him everywhere when he was tight end 7, 6. Yeah. It was a no-brainer. That was the easiest pick ever. I have him ranked tight end 3, so I'm still taking him where he goes. Even now, here's how I'm treating this group, and here's how you should treat it, right? First off, lean into what you are good at. If you do not want to deal with the tight end position and you don't want to play the yin and yang game with us or go for high upside guys and high risk guys and have to find guys on the waiver, then draft Travis Kelce. If you can get him at ADP, draft him. Even I'll consider him at the end of the first round. Personally, he's tier 1 by himself. In tier 2, Mark Andrews is there by himself, in my opinion. He has a similar upside to Travis Kelce. We've seen him have a top 5 all-time season and be the tight end 1 in fantasy football. The one time the Ravens actually threw the football a reasonable amount. So Mark Andrews is in that second tier all by himself. The reason he's not in tier 1 is that there's uncertainty there. With Travis Kelce, we know exactly what they're going to do. With Mark Andrews, it's a new offense with Todd Monken. They're basically getting rid of the fullback. They're having Patrick Ricard play offensive line. It's going to be 3 wide receivers now and a tight end, which we don't know where the ball is going to go, how thin the target is going to be. The floor is now lower for Mark Andrews than it's ever been. So the ceiling is higher. It's crazy. The ceiling's as high as it's ever been, but the floor is now lower. That's why he's tier 2. In the next group, I take Darren Waller. Yeah, I'm just going to run through it real quick, John. That's cool with you. I take Darren Waller in the next group at ADP. I think he's got the highest ceiling, but he also has a low floor of brand new offense, injury prone, all that business. If you're the kind of person that doesn't really want to think much about tight end, of the next couple guys, TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, and Dallas Goedert, those are basically the guys. take TJ Hawkinson. The bet here is whether TJ Hawkinson is going to be the second target on the team or if it's going to be Jordan Addison. But at the very least, he's going to be a top 3 target on the team. And there's a chance that this team just has super highly consolidated targets among the top 3. So if you want to play it as safe as possible, draft Hawkinson. The guys I'm not drafting are George Kittle and Dallas Goedert because those guys to me at this stage are more of like handcuff pluses the way we would categorize like AJ Dillon, where you can start him and it's okay if you start him, but you need an injury for him to have super high upside. And that's the same case for Dallas Goedert. Like he needs an injury to AJ Brown or Devonta Smith to be fully unlocked. So personally, I don't find myself drafting Kittle or Goddard. And if you're the kind of person that likes the idea of Kittle or Goddard, just take Hawkinson because he's just got a safer, easier look at it. And the guy that I'm really been falling out on a lot is Goddard because people say, okay, you know, we know he's the third target on the team, and then people say, oh, he's an end zone threat, like he's a red zone target just because he's a tight end, he's big. We always just lean into that. That's actually not the case with this guy. He only has 8 end zone targets over the last 3 years total. Mike Gesicki had 8 last year. So his over-under for touchdowns is 3.5. So when I go to the underdog stat lines where you pick higher or lower with a guy like Goddard, I'm picking higher, but I'm not picking him in my drafts. 3.5, John, that's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's kind of where I'm at as well. I don't often venture for top tight end in terms of the ADP rounds there. Like you were saying, I was grabbing Waller, earlier this year in those middle rounds, but now where he's going as tight end 4 does take away a little bit more of the value. A couple of questions, obviously, in here. We have Jack and Till Mile High Luke in there. Obviously, Alberto was a guy that was big hype last year, got cut. Their thoughts on Alberto? Where does he? Did he land somewhere yet? Did he get claimed?
He did. So it's interesting. They kind of announced that he was being released.
Yeah,
and
then they kept him.
No. So what happens sometimes is like the news gets disconjointed between the social media guys and then the other guys, where the word was going around that he was going to be released, but behind the scenes, the GM actually worked out a deal. Yeah, so they worked out one of those deals where it's like, I think there's got to be. I remember at some point a GM saying that there's a text group or text channel among all these GMs where it's like you have like a open bulletin board type thing. And I think what a lot of these teams do is say, hey, you know what? Here's our guys that are on the bubble. Let me know who you like, and they see if they can work out deals. That's why you see like Nick Folk getting moved to Vrabel and things like that. So I think that's what happened is that word got leaked that he was going to be released, but before they could actually do it, the Eagles came in and said, hey, we'll take him. So the Eagles cut Tyree Jackson, cut a couple guys, and they're going to take him on. But I mean, in what world are we going to start him?
Well, that's the thing, right? I think he's more of we saw them have some success with 2 tight ends, but different system, different quarterback. When they had Ertz and Goddard there, so probably a no for me there. And then Luke talking about his Waller was his round 5 pick a month ago. Is he still worth the pick in the third round now, or would you go somewhere else?
In tight end premium, that's where he goes. That's where he goes, Luke. So if you're playing like FFPC high stakes, if you want Waller, you got to take him there. I'm willing to take him in the 3rd or 4th in that format, in the tight end premium format, but ideally the 4th, because I don't like to reach for the high end guys, even the guys I really like. I'll take him at ADP. Otherwise, I'll wait. So for me, I take him in the 4th in that. And in regular, I take him the 6th. And also, real quick, we got a question from Jake in the chat. Yeah. He asked Nick Chubb or Travis Kelce. This is the perfect example of leaning into your strengths. I personally, I'll take Nick Chubb because I know I compete. I'm not even that I like, but I'm contractually obligated to find breakout tight ends later. Whereas if you are somebody that you're like the RB master, like you're the guy in your league that always finds the breakout wide receivers, then maybe you go RB heavy early, go tight end heavy early, and wait on wide receiver, right? So think about what you like to do. I mean, half the people in fantasy football, honestly, never pick up a quarterback off waivers. Like how many people? I swear, in every given year in my leagues, there's maybe 3 or 4 teams that are even thinking about picking off a QB off waivers. Right. That's why for me, I'm willing to wait on positions like that, knowing that I'm not going to be fighting with everybody. Everybody loves running back and wide receiver. So think about it that way. sometimes, Jake, if you have a tiebreaker like that, what do you want to do? What do you want to do this year? Do you want to be scrapping for tight end with us? If not, just take Kelsey.
I mean, that's definitely the way to go. And Justin Fensterman, our friend, he talks about that all the time, where he used to like kind of wait on tight end and he would try to find the late round guys, and he would always be unhappy with it. And then all of a sudden, one year, he just like took Travis Kelce and he realized just how less stressful it was to like worry about the tight end position every week when you can just set it, forget it, have the number one tight end, and then worry about like the depth of the other positions, because there are more often than not more guys on the waiver wire at wide receiver or running back that come out and less than tight end, and you can just kind of worry about top end there.
Exactly. That's it. I mean, that's it. So just think about the way you want to play, especially when it comes to tiebreakers like that. Like, don't draft a worse player on a strategy like that. I never draft a worse player over strategies like that. I never draft a worse player because I'm trying to guess who gets hurt or not. I never draft a worse player to stack. But if it comes down to tiebreakers, then you start thinking about stuff like that. Anyway, let's get back to the tight ends.
Yeah, let's get into the next group here. Finishing it, rounding out the top 12 names on the board. Kyle Pitts comes in at tight end 6, Dallas Goedert tight end 7, Evan Ingram tight end 8, Pat Freiermuth tight end 9, David Njoku tight end 10, Dalton Kincaid tight end 11, and Dalton Schultz tight end 12. Coop, we just did our flag plants show yesterday. We wrote the article. Dalton Kincaid, you flag planted to be a top 5 fantasy tight end. So when you discuss your strategy of waiting and identifying and finding that late round tight end value, have to imagine that's the dart you're throwing.
Yeah, that's my guy. I mean, and I'm also a high risk guy. So if Kyle Pitts slides and I can get him after ADP, I'll take him too. But I'm not really taking Goddard. And of this next group, Ingram, Freiermuth, even Njoku to some degree. Like if I take Evan Ingram or Pat Freiermuth, then I still feel like I need to take another tight end to give myself a shot at upside. Like Evan Ingram, he wasn't even a top 2 target on the team technically last year, and now they added Calvin Ridley and Pat Freiermuth. Kenny Pickett, we expect him to hopefully take a step forward, but we love DeAndre Johnson, we love George Pickens. It's tough for him to really have super high upside the way a guy like Dalton Kincaid can play in slot for Josh Allen. So once I get past, so if I immediately say I'm not going to take Dallas Goedert, I'm not going to take Pat Freiermuth, and now I'm already into the range where I'm drafting 2 tight ends, I just start thinking about how early do I need to take Dalton Kincaid. That's my move, and I'll double tap Kincaid and Njoku or Kincaid and Schultz, the old Dalton double dip if I have to, and maybe not start the rookie week 1, but I'm going for upside, man. The difference between tight end 7 and tight end 15 last year was 13 points. The year before that, the difference between tight end 8 and tight end 11 was literally less than 1 point. Those guys are lying all over the ground. So just give yourself a shot at upside, knowing that you can just pick up Tyler Higbee or any loser tight end that's going to finish like tight end 9 anyway. So, last year, Tyler Higbee was tight end 6. He was one of the most, the tight ends that finished like 6, 7, 8, Higbee, Taysom Hill, Cole Kmet, those guys were virtually unstartable if you go and look at the week to week for those guys. So just, go shoot for the moon in this range. It doesn't matter. So that's why for me, just stop thinking about floor with tight ends.
When it comes to David Njoku, obviously he's the player profile tier 1 because his getting images pictures just have him look like an absolute
He's
moose.
A monster.
Obviously, this is a guy that the fantasy community has been kind of enthralled with since he's been drafted. The athletic profile, the size, he checks all the boxes of a guy that should just be, an absolute mismatch at the position here. Deshaun Watson now at quarterback. We saw them have a little bit of chemistry there. He's obviously the target 2, we assume, but does Elijah Moore, impact your thoughts on Njoku, or is he something that you're confident in drafting? It's
honestly the same game at a cheaper price that we're playing with TJ Hawkinson. It's the same game, man, where it's like, we like the guy in theory. We think that the quarterback is good enough to deliver the football. There's a top target on the team. Justin Jefferson obviously is more of a target threat than Amari Cooper, but there's a top target on the team established, and then there's a battle for 2. Right. So for David, I feel like drafting David Njoku is just a cheaper way to make the same TJ Hawkinson play. So if you're somebody that likes Hawkinson, I don't see why you wouldn't like Njoku. It's just, I think that the threats against Njoku in terms of targets And also in terms of how he's used, he still is used as an inline tight end by Kevin Stefanski. He's not like Kincaid, who Brandon Beane straight up said Kincaid's going to play slot.
Right.
Like that's a different beast. So I actually don't mind drafting Njoku at all. I have a ton of Njoku, right?
Good. Good.
I just say if somebody else drafts Dalton Kincaid and Njoku's there, I just take him. That's as easy as that.
What do we make of Pat Freiermuth there being in the top 10? I mean, listen, this is a guy where you and I have talked a lot about this, breaking down other positions where you have Deontay Johnson, you have George Pickens, both kind of being drafted as early wide receiver 3s, late wide receiver 2s in some formats. Now you have Pat Freiermuth as a top 10 tight end coming off the board, but then you have Kenny Pickett being drafted as like QB 22 to QB 17, depending on your format in that range. Are you a believer in Freiermuth coming out as a top 10 fantasy tight end this year?
And this is why it's so tough in talking to fantasy gamers and casual fans, because it's hard for us to say. I think George Kittle and Pat Freiermuth are very good players, and they also seem like they're really good dudes too. You know, it's like we like everything about these guys except the situation they're in, where the offense isn't necessarily based around them. They're not necessarily the full focal points of the offense, which that's what you have with Travis Kelce, and it's what you have with Mark Andrews, and it's what you have with, honestly, Darren Waller and Kyle Pitts. And it's why, to me, these guys, it's not the same as it was. Like a guy, so Pat Freiermuth, there are a lot of good stats for him. If you go check my fades article, where unfortunately he's listed, you'll see a ton of positive stats for him. Like, for instance, he led all players, not just tight ends, all players in 2-minute drill targets last year. He, in fact, not even just the targets, but someone on my timeline asked a very smart question. They said, well, maybe the Steelers were just in more of those situations than everyone else. I said, you know what? That's a great question. So I actually added up the number of those targets. He had the highest percentage too, right? He had like 30% of the targets when they had their back against the ropes. Yeah. So they do love him. He obviously caught the seam.
That's the Steelers offense too. I mean, Big Ben made a living throwing to get Keith Miller and that whole crew, right? So
yeah. So my advice to people out there is, if you want to be in on the thing with Deontay Johnson, he's not going to go from 3 straight years of 140 plus targets to even just 100. But even 100 means he's the top 2 target on the team, right? Deontay Johnson's, even if you have him falling a bit, he's not going to fall off the planet. Yeah. So if you like Pat Freiermuth, you need to be fading George Pickens. There's no two ways to do it. Either that, or as you imply, John, Kenny Pickett is going to, tear all our faces off and be this year's Trevor Lawrence.
The one thing with Freiermuth that I got a little worried about was, you look at tight ends and, they tend to be favorite targets in red zones or bigger bodies. And then we're seeing highlights of Darnell Washington at 6'8", 270, just out there being an absolute red zone animal, right? Like Pickett can just throw it up to that guy. And, is Freiermuth going to get looks over Washington if they're in close like that? Like, I feels like Washington is a red zone special for that offense.
Anyone that had Gerald Everett, knows that feeling when Donald Parham catches a touchdown and you're like, what the heck was that? You know what I mean? Like these guys are gigantic, dude. So, I mean, honestly, of that crew, the more I think about it, especially in best ball and 2 QB formats, kind of like Kenny Pickett at ADP. I like Deontay Johnson because Deontay Johnson feels safe. So I like Deontay Johnson and I like Kenny Pickett, and I'm just not drafting as much George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. Sure.
Listen, if you've watched this show all season, you know that we've talked more highly about Kenny Pickett for the entire offseason. Then he plays like 5 drives during the preseason, leaves them all for touchdown drives. We're like, I think Kenny Pickett might be okay.
I know, dude. And I think the dichotomy I picture is, if everything goes according to plan, then you're going to have something like Los Angeles, the Chargers, where Keenan Allen's Deontay Johnson, and then you've got the crazy contested catch guy, Mike Williams. That's George Pickens, right? And then you have the who cares Josh Palmer. That's Allen Robinson. And then you have the tight end who, if somebody gets hurt, highly relevant, but otherwise you're just kind of hoping that he scores touchdowns. So that's where I'm at with Muth. We're obviously, it'd be easier on us if he wasn't such a talented player. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. I agree with you. A couple more questions here. Mile High Luke want to know our thoughts on Watt. I think he finishes a top 10 quarterback. Again, this is the guy last full season. He finished as a top 5 quarterback. I like the weapons that he has. I think give him another full offseason system, getting used to the NFL pace of play here, comfortability, all that stuff. I don't think that there's going to be a drop off like we sort of saw some inconsistencies where he was just getting back into the flow of things of having to read an NFL defense basically live on the fly, like we had to deal with last year coming in. So I do like Watson, a guy I've been looking to target in the middle of the late rounds as a quarterback in drafts for sure.
We got to remember that this guy, like, besides the short stretch last year, he's actually never been bad. He was amazing straight out the gate as a rookie. Then he got hurt, and then he's been awesome. And then last year he was a little rusty. If you take all the quarterbacks in the history of the league all time and sort them in fantasy points per game, the list goes Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, 1, 2, 3. And 4 is Kyler Murray, and 5 is Justin Herbert. So, like, there's a world where this guy is just amazing.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
I agree with you 100%. Let's take a look at some of these later round tight ends here. These are some of the dart throws, some of the guys that you've mentioned already. Someone that you were initially super high on and now maybe taking a little bit of a cooler on him is Chigga Thoughts on this? 13 to 24. It's a long list. I won't rattle them all off. If you're watching the screen, you can give them a look. If you are listening, I guess I'll rattle them off for you.
Rattle them off for listeners.
Yeah. John Johnson, Chigga Tyler Higbee, Sam Laporta, tight end 16, Cole Kmet, Greg Dulcich, Irv Smith, Gerald Everett's your tight end 20, Luke Musgrave 21, Gesicki 22, Ferguson 23, and Hunter Henry 24. 2 Patriots tight ends rounding out the tight end 22 to 24 there. We like Laporta. We had now I'm blanking on his name, Jake Butt on the show, and he loved Sam Laporta on the show here. If you're deep dive in dart throwing guys outside the top 12, or if you're in a deeper league format, Coop, where are you going with your tight end here?
Yeah, so the way I look at it, this is the place your bets range, right? Because some of these guys have a shot to be a top 2 target on the team. Some of them don't. Immediately, I rule out, if we go through the list, I mean, so Juwan Johnson, that's a pretty simple one. I like Michael Thomas. There are a lot of people that don't. If you don't like Michael Thomas, then what are you doing about it? Are you drafting Rashid Shaheed? Are you drafting Juwan Johnson? Right now, for me, Juwan Johnson, I liked him previously, but kind of scares me they added Jimmy Graham, he's touchdowns and nothing else right now. You know what I mean? So the fact that he's even on the roster, I don't like. Taysom Hill's there, and I like Michael Thomas, so I'm out there. Chigga, we love the profile. If you break down the things that led us to like Mark Andrews, the yards per route run, the lining up in the slot, the not blocking on a lot of pass plays, the high ADOT, the athleticism, like Chigga, it reminds us almost exactly of rookie year Mark Andrews. In fact, if you look at the receptions and the touchdown, the receptions were virtually the same. The touchdowns were virtually the same. Andrews just had a little bit of a higher ADOT. But in terms of yards per route run, contested catches, Chick actually was higher in all those stats. The problem is they brought in DeAndre Hopkins, and Treylon Burks is there. So, he really needs Treylon Burks to fall on his face or DeAndre Hopkins to get hurt, But he's a guy that if one of those guys goes down, I immediately move him way up. Tyler Higbee, boring. And also, he feels safe in terms of targets, but last year, so many games where he played, where he had less than 5 fantasy points. Just killer. Sam Laporta is the perfect last bench spot player for your team. You draft him and put him in the last bench spot. If he does anything while Jameson Williams is out, keep him. If he doesn't do anything with Jameson Williams out, then it's not going to get any better when JMO gets back, so drop him. That's it, man. That's it. And week 1, honestly, I tweeted this out earlier. I said, who amongst us has the stones to start Sam Laporta week 1 versus Kansas City with the 54-point over-under? I mean, in that, when I'm setting the DFS slate for just that, I believe that's the Monday night game, John. No, it's not. Monday is Jets and
The opener?
And it's the opener on Thursday. Yeah, so for the Thursday opener game, I'm doing Sam Laporta in that.
Showdown action, 8:20 p.m. in Kansas City to kick off the season. 2
tight ends, dude. Sam Laporta. Thank you, Luke. Thursday. Sam Laporta, showdown captain from Kevin Tompkins. There you go, dude. That's heart right there. And put Travis Kelce in there too. Double tight end set. Heck, throw Noah Gray in there. Triple tight end set. What's up? No, don't put
I
Noah
mean,
Gray in.
you kind of needed probably to pay up for Mahomes and that crew in the showdown
Right.
sleeves anyway. So.
Right. Might be a little expensive. But yeah, Laporta, that's what we're doing. Cole Kmet, man, that is such a tough one because last year he started the season with double zeros, but he came around and scored a bunch of touchdowns. But now they added DJ Moore, they got Chase Claypool. He's more of a best ball play than someone I could trust week to week.
You think Claypool does anything? I mean, he hasn't really made any impact. He hasn't had great reports out of camp. I mean, I like Claypool as a player in like the measurables, and he looked good at times, obviously with Pittsburgh. But what are your thoughts on how he does mesh with this Bears team?
Well, I mean, it's not just Claypool; it's also Darnell Mooney. But the thing with Claypool is we haven't really seen it because he and Justin Fields only played one game together where they both played more than 50% of the snaps. And in that game, Claypool got 6 targets, caught 5 of them, and he hurt his knee.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I haven't really seen it. That's why I look around and I'm like, is Cole Kmet a better pass catcher than Darnell Mooney? He's definitely not better than DJ Moore. But is Cole Kmet going to get more targets than Moondog? Is Cole Kmet going to get more targets than Claypool? And I have a hard time saying yes to either.
I guess it kind of depends for me on how that offense runs down. Now, obviously, Darnell Mooney is a 1,000-yard receiver, like no doubt about it, 2 years ago. But you also have, again, we talk about this a lot. Like, how do guys get reslotted in an offense when a better player comes in? So now, if you're looking at an offense where DJ Moore is going to be the number one receiver, no doubt. Is Justin Fields more likely just to take a bunch of shots downfield to Mooney or Claypool? It's certainly possible. I mean, definitely possible with his mobility, allows for big plays. Or is it Cole Kmet that's kind of just settling in the middle of the field, and that's the safety net for Fields when read one DJ Moore is covered or not open right away, right? That's kind of what I look about, because it does take longer for guys like Claypool and Mooney for their routes to develop, for those guys to get open at times, unless it's just a designed, downfield chuck. They got the bomb called, and they're waiting for Mooney to run down the sideline. So that's kind of where I wonder about Kmet, where Mooney was great a couple of years ago, but if Moore and Kmet kind of fit in the offense a little bit more as these intermediate route guys or guys that can settle into zones to give the easy throw to Fields, that's what I eager to see.
The Cole Kmet, because we could debate it for hours. The flip side is that Justin Fields doesn't like dumping it down. So it's like Cole Kmet is a crazy one in there. I think that in best ball, I mean, I just drafted him while we're on here. I'm doing a best ball draft with the Fantasy Alarm members that accidentally fired too early. And yeah, that was my mistake. Sorry, everybody. But I took Cole Kmet because I had Justin Fields. And I said, you know what? Why not? But it's just the guessing game of where and when that happens is what I don't like. So if you could pull that back up, we'll wrap up this crew here.
There you go.
Yeah. So, I go through and so Greg Dulcich is kind of in a similar boat where now that Judy's out, I'm kind of back in, but man, it's just a mess on who's doing what over there, with Cole Kmet, I mean, we didn't even know what they're doing with Robert Tonyan and the rest of that crew either. So let's get off him. I will say this. I'd much rather have Cole Kmet or Greg Dulcich than Irv Smith or Gerald Everett. That's the classic surface level analysis of somebody saying, good quarterback, I'll just take this player, right? Without sitting back and listing off who the top targets are on the team and who's actually going to lead that team in targets. Like, John, let's do the Chargers. What player on the Chargers do you think gets the most targets?
Keenan Allen.
Yeah, that's my pick as well. Who do you think would be second?
Austin Eckler,
100 targets a year guy, right? And minimum 90. Who do you think would be third, barring injury?
Probably Mike Williams.
Almost definitely Mike Williams. Gerald Everett last year, he only played I think it was only 2 games where he played more than 70% of the snaps. He's not even a full-time player.
Yeah, I wonder how in shape he was last year. Remember, like the infamous play where he was clearly gassed. They threw him the ball and then he fumbled in like the goal line.
Yeah. It was a pick six. It was he just gave up. He was just too tired. He turned around like he was sleepwalking, man. And so you have to wonder if maybe it was a conditioning thing with Gerald Everett. And here's the other crazy thing is he was relevant last year because Mike Williams and Keenan Allen only played 2 full games together, but he wasn't even that relevant for having wide receivers out the entire year. And on top of that, they went out and spent their first round pick on Quentin Johnston. So even if somebody gets hurt, now he's got another hurdle there. So not interested in it. And we could play the same game with Irv Smith, where last year Joe Mixon had more targets per game than Hayden Hurst.
Right.
So if you're playing that game, you get through Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon. We're talking the fifth target on that team. Miss me with that. How many injuries away is Irv Smith from being a focal point of that offense?
Yeah, well, that's the point, right? I mean, there was obviously certain matchups last year where Hayden Hurst did have like a little stretch, but not consistent enough to where you're then now banking on Irv Smith to be that guy.
Right.
What are your thoughts on Greg Dulcich here? I mean, a guy that a lot of people were a little bit hyped about when he got on the field last year, made a couple of plays that we know the disaster of the Denver Broncos offense. Now, I know you're looking at that. You're looking, all right, they have Jerry Jeudy, they have Courtland Sutton, they drafted Mims, but Dulcich is still a guy there. We saw Russell Wilson throw the tight end a little bit while he was in Seattle. Judy's already hurt. Again, I know we don't like to predict injuries. Sutton's a guy that's dealt with issues in his past. I mean, if we were looking at a Sean Payton offense, at or led team that has featured tight ends in the past, do you like a Greg Dulcich here?
Yeah, so Greg Dulcich, that's a player that's kind of torn this hashtag fantasy alarm family apart this year, because like when you look at this team, all of our different fantasy alarm analysts kind of like different people. Like you and me, John, have been kind of Judy guys, right?
Yeah.
And Howard Bender, in his flag plant article, and as his flag plant is Courtland Sutton. And he makes a good point that, that's Courtland Sutton is potentially in the role that they used Michael Thomason. And then Britt Flynn is in on Greg Dulcich. And there's arguments to be made for all of them, right? My concern with Dulcich is kind of, he has gone from being a guy I thought was safe to being super high risk, high reward, because on one hand, you got all those targets. You got Marvin Mims that this team drafted, and you have Adam Trotman, who Sean Payton put at the top of the depth chart. And I know that we say, oh, he'll just be a blocking tight end. But sometimes when you have that inline tight end, the other guy, the Cameron Brate of the world, or the Anthony Ferkser of the world, or the last year Mike Gesicki, who only played like 45% of the snaps, 40% of snaps, sometimes that guy doesn't play a full snap share anymore. So that's the question of the day for Greg Dulcich. The idea that he'll be Jimmy Graham or be a matchup nightmare for Sean Payton, where he takes him and tries to get linebackers out on him, that is great. That sounds awesome. If he's a full-time player doing that, then his ceiling is very high. But if he's only a part-time player, then we just wasted a draft pick. So but that's why I'd rather take a stab on that than on a known. It's like in poker. I would rather go for the flush draw, or the straight draw, than just be completely drawing dead with Irv Smith and Gerald Everett. Like Irv Smith is 7-2 offsuit. So I'll take Greg Dulcich all day there. And I'll even go past those guys and take Luke Musgrave, right? Like, we don't know who is going to – those guys are all mystery boxes, even Christian Watson to a certain degree. So you got Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave. We don't know who Jordan Love is going to like as his guy. What if Jordan Love comes – do not clip this out there and separate the context. I already know if he, like, I'm looking around in the chat and I see like Dustin and Tompkins in here. Do not clip part of this, what I'm about to say, and separate the context here. But what if Jordan Love is a sleeping giant, and this is, Pat Mahomes coming out, or Aaron Rodgers himself coming out from being a backup and just being ready to go right away? And what if his favorite target is Luke Musgrave? And you have Jordan Love, Travis Kelce. I mean, I know it's crazy, but it isn't that crazy. Luke Musgrave is a second-round pick, and he's crazy athletic. He's a professional skier, right? Yeah. Like, there's a world where this guy's just awesome, dude. So, Kev Tompkins says he's not clipping that. He's a Packers fan. But, I mean, you can't rule out the unknown. That's why Luke Musgrave's interesting to me. And same goes for Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry.
How do we talk about the Patriots tight ends here?
Yes. So that's the thing. If Mike Gesicki didn't separate his shoulder, then I was way in on him. Because we've heard Bill Belichick on 8 or 9 occasions. Alex Barth, a beat writer for the Patriots, actually went out and pulled the transcripts and found 8 or 9 occasions before Mike Gesicki was even here where a reporter said, what are your thoughts on the tight end from the Dolphins? And Belichick did the, neckbeard will actually move and said he's more of a big wide receiver. And this guy on many occasions said he thinks of this player as a big wide receiver. And then Mike Gesicki, unhappy with his job, could have gone anywhere as a free agent. And he comes to the coach who called him a big wide receiver. So that to me, I'm like, geez, this sounds like a happy situation where they have a guy that's going to play big slot. Yeah. But now we got the shoulder. So the way I look at this offense is they're trying to recreate 2011 Bill O'Brien's offense where, obviously they had Tom Brady. So, yes. Rob Gronkowski was the tight end 1 and Aaron Hernandez was the tight end 3 and Wes Welker got 173 targets. You can't project that, obviously. But if they're trying to recreate something like that, I mean,
I think he said the first day that he got brought in there, O'Brien sat him and Hunter Henry down and showed them tape of that offense of Gronk and Hernandez and how they ran things. So, I mean,
makes me like all 3 of them. Makes me like Juju too, right? Like if Juju is going to be Wes Welker, then of course.
Patriots fans, we're certainly hopeful, but as you and I ran down the schedule last week for New England, it is an absolute brutal, disgusting schedule with some teams that cover tight ends really well. A lot of guys. I mean, the Eagles just went and got Simmons. That 2 years ago, he was one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL.
I don't know what the hell happened with him, man, because he was shutting guys down. He's shutting running backs and tight ends down. Yeah. And he got maybe has the yips or something. I don't know.
I mean, Cardinals are just a trash team too. But I mean, now you're adding a guy in Simmons who ran a 4.4 to an Eagles offense or Giants offense rather, Giants defense rather. The Giants are there. That is already going to be one of among the sack leaders in the NFL. So the Patriots had to play the NFC East, with that whole defense. It's going to be a struggle.
I'll tell you what my thoughts on, and I don't want to turn this into a Patriots podcast, though I will.
We should consider that though. We'd have a following, but
we probably should. Yeah. But anyway, so my thought process on what the Patriots are doing is they looked at the teams they play in the division and they looked at the schedule, right? And they saw Sauce Gardner and Darius Slay and James Bradbury and, Xavier Howard and Trey White and all these kind of hired gun killer cornerbacks. And they said, let's not give them anything to cover. Yeah. I looked at Sauce Gardner in his stats last year, where he lined up. He played well over 1,000 snaps last year. Guess how many he lined up in the slot, John?
How many?
9.
Not few. It's not many.
That's not many, dude. The Patriots went out and said, okay, this guy doesn't ever come inside and he's, a generational player. Well, he can cover Devontae Parker if he wants. And we'll just put Juju and Gesicki in the slot and, split Hunter Henry out wide even. I mean, are the Jets prepared to change what they do? Like in some of these teams, are you going to send James Bradbury into the slot? Like, that's the question some of these teams are going to face with this weird Patriots offense, right? So it's kind of interesting to see. But I agree. It could just end up being a big split nightmare, but that's why these guys go, tight end 20.
Right. Obviously, there's, deeper tight end conversations that can be had. We have dynasty leagues, best ball. Those are the top 24 tight ends off the board. Some people play in deeper leagues, Coop, or tight end premiums and 2 tight end leagues. I was in a league that yesterday that I drafted that had a double flex. One was a wide receiver tight end. One was the traditional wide receiver running back tight end. If you're in a league that values tight ends, like, do you have anybody later that you're looking to target?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of guys, dude. I'll tell you one that didn't even show up in the ADP there. Is that RT Sports?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was probably the top 25 then. The guy going at top 26, I actually really like, because we play the game of, uncertainty in the later rounds is our friend. Early on, we want certainty. That's why Kelsey's tier 1 and Andrews is in tier 2, because he doesn't have the certainty that Kelsey has. When you get into these later rounds, we lean into uncertainty and we say, let's look at these offenses where we don't know where the ball is going to go and take stabs on who might be a top 2 target. I look at the Panthers, the 2020 Panthers. It was all new weapons. We thought it was going to be DJ Moore, and it ended up being like Robbie Anderson. 2023 Panthers, we look at it and it's like, geez, you've got a brand new quarterback, brand new wide receivers in Mingo, Chark, and Thielen, a brand new running back in Miles Sanders, and a brand new tight end in Hayden Hurst.
Yeah.
Why can't it be Hayden Hurst? You got a smaller QB that, with questions about the line, why wouldn't they lean into Hayden Hurst? Now, on the flip side, maybe they have him block a ton and he doesn't really do
Right.
anything. But at tight end 26, you just grab him and then you drop him, right? The other
I
places,
grabbed him in the FSGA best ball. Obviously, I won that league last year. Waited on tight end this year and landed on Hayden Hurst as like one of the last tight end grabs for me to kind of build out that tight end position.
yeah. So it's like in this range, I like to categorize them into either best ball / standard plays or actual redraft plays. In redraft plays, which is PPR and half PPR to me, you need targets. Targets are king. So that's where you lean into bad offenses or uncertain offenses and hope you get the targets out of there. So guys like Hayden Hurst, going with somebody like Zach Ertz and or Trey McBride on that ghost ship that the Cardinals are building, right? It's where you look at a guy like Cade Otton and say, okay, if one of Mike Evans or Chris Godwin gets hurt or traded, who are they going to throw to? Right? They just lost Russell Gage for the year. You look at the Washington, where Eric Bieniemy's coming in, and he's got a whole bag of tight end tricks. So if it's Logan Thomas, it's Logan Thomas. If it's Cole Turner, it's Cole Turner. On the flip side, with the guys that you're looking at, right, with the best ball, that's where we say, okay, let's just pick guys that are tied to the magic quarterback that can make a touchdown out of anything. So we'll take Cole Kmet. We'll take Tyler Conklin, right? Like Tyler Conklin, he will score touchdowns, right? The question is when. It's like Robert Tonyan with the 11 touchdown season. It was all fun and games until championship week came and he caught one pass and it wasn't a touchdown. So I could see Tyler Conklin only catching 40, 50 passes, but having 6, 7, 8 touchdowns. That's the best ball play. Maybe the ultimate one would be Dawson Knox, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, right. Well, that was a guy, as you mentioned, the touchdowns that he was just pulling in, and you were famously arguing on Twitter to people being like, you can't consistently count on him to score these wide open one-off touchdowns where nobody's covering him and expect that to be consistent production. And then, sure enough, second half of the season, he was nowhere to be found. You also had that happen there early on with the tight end there for the Packers there for a little bit, where the skill measures weren't there. He was just uncovered and finding the end zone at a clip that wasn't really able to be consistent for production wise.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And then, if we're going to round things out for redraft, and then I can give you a couple deeper dino guys that I like for redraft, one guy, and I alluded to him earlier, that if I have deep benches, because I know if your league has 4 or 5 bench spots, you don't have a spot for this player. But a lot of us out there say, hey, you know what? We want this to be about who did their homework, who cares the most. And your league has 8, 9, 10 bench spots. If you get that far where everybody's drafting 2 QBs and everyone's drafting 2 tight ends, I'm drafting Isaiah Likely. In fact, on this very network, we covered a $5,000 entry fee RT Sports draft that was, it was 1 QB, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and 1 flex. So fairly thin starting lineups, but it was an 18-round draft. And watching these guys, the way they operated, the guy that took Mark Andrews turned around and took Isaiah Likely very early on.
Right.
And Isaiah Likely is a guy that if I have a ton of bench spots, throw Isaiah Likely on the bench. And if anything happens to Mark Andrews, he's going directly into my lineup. And not just if Mark Andrews is my tight end. I mean, last year, if you looked at the number, instead of having a 2 tight end set with these 2 players, they basically said, Isaiah Likely, you are just the understudy to Mark Andrews. Whatever he does, you just try and be him. And when he was out those 2 games, 8 targets a game for Isaiah Likely. And he lined up in the slot, or at not just slot, but slot plus wide receiver, 80% of his snaps. And he only blocked on 1.2% of his pass plays on the entire season. This guy, he's the one handcuff tight end, John, maybe ever, because I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I said, yeah, this tight, it just doesn't happen like that in this league. Usually you have a diverse backfield diverse tight end group where it's like you got a blocker and you have a pass catcher. And if the pass catcher goes down, you got nobody. In this case, this is the one team that said, we're going to have 2 of these guys. So I'm all for it, man. And I'll even, so that's the one kind of deep redraft handcuff tight end.
So we got a question. I just want to get your thoughts here, Kyle, in chat. Obviously, everybody's leagues are unique. He's in an 8-team start 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
Wants to know, does that make you more or less likely to prioritize the position, knowing that 16 tight ends are coming off the board? You got to start 2 of them.
Yeah, being a tight end connoisseur, I get invited to these type of leagues all the time. So I've played a good number of them, Kyle. And the way I feel best about it is to treat it like hero RB or anchor RB, because I've done the game where you wait and just draft a mess of tight ends, and setting your line, even me, like where I come up with weekly tight end rankings and people depend on them. Even for me, it's as John would call it, an ice cream headache. Yeah. Trying to figure out, if you have 5 tight ends that are all virtually the same, trying to figure out what 2 to start, you're going to lose your marbles, man. So what I like doing in that situation is trying to get a guy I really trust. For me, like, even if you wait a little bit and take Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts, or honestly, once it gets to 2 tight ends, now all of a sudden Evan Ingram and Pat Freiermuth are starting every single week for, you know what I mean? So if you can just get one guy where you say, okay, Evan Ingram, he's in my lineup every week, no matter what.
Yeah.
After that, then I don't mind taking 2 or 3 later guys and just trying to find a guy, or even trying to add a guy off waivers, because now it's much easier to pick one of 3 or one of 2 than it is to pick 2 of 4 or 2 of 5. So that's the way I do it. Go hero tight end, and then we'll find you somebody. And that, it feels nice because it's like you can also still scour the wire and play the yin and yang tight end game.
Hey, you do the weekly article during the in-season.
Yeah.
On Tuesdays it comes out. You have your tight end yin yang article and waiver wire priorities. So people can help find your article. It's for free on Fantasy Alarm. You can find you over on Reddit. And if you have a need for that tight end too, I mean, Coop for sure is your guy there.
Yeah, here's what we're doing this year for tight ends, because, and you have to thank Howard Bender on this one, because we work really hard on this content. We need to make money, and a lot of the premium, all our best content is behind the paywall. But Howard Bender this year said that we can do a weekly tight end article that will be free. So people doing the yin yang tight end, there's going to be a free weekly article that's going to be it's going to be the weekly look at who the best starts are, guys to add. So that's going to be free on Tuesdays. Then the DFS picks, which is the real money makers, those are going to be behind the paywall as always. And the rest of season rankings, which I'm going to update every Tuesday at every position, those are going to be for members only. And it has to be that way. It's like the members are the heart of what we do. They are the community, so they get special treatment. So we're going to have the season long ones. Those are members, but thanks to the generosity of Howard Bender, we're going to at least help you, guide you on a weekly basis at the tight end position.
Yeah. And again, no better time than now to get in. I mean, you see this QR code on the screen, get the draft guide for free when you sign up, get a free 7-day free trial. You get the annual package. It's 40% off right now, the month-to-month cost. So you can go ahead and save a whole bunch of money. If you're going to play for the entire fantasy football season, you honestly might as well just get the annual package. It's the same amount of money. You get a year's worth of content. Plus, it's going to end up including 2 draft guides. If you buy now, you're going to get next year's draft guide included in the package. It's a year long.
If you really think about it, you're getting like 6 draft guides, because you're getting baseball, basketball, hockey,
cheat sheets for everything.
Cheat sheets. You get access to the Discord.
Yeah. So really, right now is probably the best time, because you're going to middle everything. You're going to get this year's draft guide and cheat sheet, next year's draft guide and cheat sheet, all the way up to draft season. Then, of course, obviously, you're going to be involved in our NFL DFS content. We had Millionaire Mike a couple years ago. FanDuel single bullet
bought a boat.
Billy. Bought a boat. Yeah, bought a boat with it. So a lot of great stuff going on over here at Fantasy Alarm, and now really is the best time to join. You can scan the QR code. You click the link down in the description as well. If you have any questions, continue to throw them in chat. If not, I mean, again, you can just follow us along. Coop and I are going to be here all season long. You can stay tuned after this. Coop has Alarm Fantasy Football for everybody. They're going to be doing a Best Ball Million. What are they doing?
Best Ball Mania 4.
Mania 4
million, not even $1 million. $3 million.
$3 million for Best Ball Mania 4 draft. So Coop's pretty face will be on for another, 2 hours? Hour?
No, 1 hour on that one.
1 hour. 1 hour.
We were supposed to be doing a family best ball draft, but that fired early by accident. Not sure who's to blame. It was me. But that's okay. We're gonna do another family draft tomorrow from 2 to 3. So if you're in the Discord, hit me up on there. We'll get you in for 2 to 3 tomorrow. Today we're gonna do a one of our last best ball milli makers, trying to win that big money. With those are crazy because if you have the best regular season team, you win $1 million. And
Right.
if you win the whole thing, you get 3 million. And there's a chance that if your team is just that good, you win them both and get 4 million. So pretty crazy.
A lot of great things going on there. So stay tuned with the channel here for our Alarm Fantasy Football, right? That's the name of the show. I should know. I'm the content manager.
You should definitely.
But there's like 9,000 shows. There's a lot going on here.
We got a lot going on.
Alarm Fantasy Football is coming up next. Find us in Discord. Find us on Twitter. Coop and I will be back next week breaking down some NFL Week 1 games. We'll talk to you later.